Hello, everyone, all the folks that came in at the crack of 2 o'clock. We're going to wait just a little bit of a couple of minutes just to make sure that everyone gets in. So welcome. This is going to be a great hour that we have. We have lots of information to get through and great questions and even better answers to this. So I think you're going to really enjoy your time. So how's the game going? I'm wondering how the game is because we don't have it on.
Which game? Which game?
The Cleveland Browns.
They're playing right now.
As we speak. So,
you know, put it in the chat.
Yeah. If I hear my husband sort of hollering and he sounds happy, you know, if you hear that, hopefully not, he's pretty far away, but we hope that things are good. It's a good week. We get to.
Were you aware of that day when they had a men's basketball game, a women's basketball game, a hockey game, a football game, and a soccer game, and a baseball game all in the same day? They said it never happened before and it'll never happen again.
That's too much for Clevelanders. We just can't take that much at one time. There'll be heart attacks. Cleveland Clinic will be full. So.
Yeah, it was a dry season there for a few months. It was hard for people who are used to watching sports.
Well, it's still, you know, the ads they have on TV are just hysterical to me. Football! I scream.
Yeah, the guy talking to the squirrel, and he's like, fumble.
Yeah,
yeah, that's kind of me. So, well, it's about 2:05, so I'm gonna get started. So, hello and welcome to everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We just want a reminder to everybody, all the attendees, that you're going to have access to the Q&A portal to ask questions if you have any, and we'll get to those close to the end of the hour. So get your questions ready, write them down, and you can send them in, and we will go through and ask a couple of questions at the end. So welcome to the Cleveland International Film Festival's post-film conversation for the film Aggie. My name is Jennifer Coleman, and I'm the program director for creative culture and arts at the George Gund Foundation, as well as the moderator for this conversation today. So the George Gund Foundation was founded by George Gund II in 1952. We are a place-based family foundation, and when we say place-based, we mean the Cleveland area, and we're committed to the human well-being and progress of society. I'm thrilled to be joined by our two very, very special guests. The first is Catherine Gund, who's the director, producer, and cinematographer for the documentary Aggie, as well as the chair of the Board of Trustees for the George Gund Foundation, and mostly importantly, Agnes Gund's daughter. And we have Agnes Gund herself, President Emerita of the Museum of Modern Art, founder of the Art for Justice Fund, subject of the documentary Aggie, or should I say the star of it, and of course, the mother of Catherine Gund, the director. So let's get started with questions. The first one is for Aggie, and it was about the point in the movie where you were doing studio visits to some of the artists that you were very interested in. And you were absolutely beaming and happy, I think maybe only second to when you were talking to your grandchildren. But what do you like to do in those studio visits? And what are some of your most memorable ones?
well, I love to visit with the artists and see them, and I used to do that all the time. One artist I particularly enjoyed a visit to was Jetty Saboni. He's young now, he was young then, but I don't know what age he is exactly. But he's a lot younger than I am. And at the time we were in Brooklyn at the Brooklyn, they have lots of places where you can see art. And this was one of the sort of docks where they had a lot of trucks that were, he brought in because he wanted to take panels from the trucks that had gone through weathering and everything else. And he just had this marvelous looking one, which is now in the Museum of Modern Art. I don't know whether it will be shown, but it was at the time, they seemed to like it because it very much reminded me of other artists that had done work. It was white and peeling, and which was like some of the art that I'd seen off and on when I was visiting people. So
it was fun. And you got to be with the artist in here.
yeah, and hear him talk, and he was marvelous about explaining what he got out of it. But I ended up explaining more what I got out of it than he did, and he really liked that. He seemed to enjoy we spent about an hour and a half visiting and talking about it, but it was really enjoyable. Many of them are much more closeted. They're not in a big expanse, which this is, where a lot of artists are go to this place and have studios near or in this
loading dock area.
yeah, well, it's
Dumbo?
yeah, it's a big area. It's Brooklyn.
A part of it, like, but
Yeah.
not Dumbo.
No.
Yeah, it was really interesting how the back and forth. I mean, you were asking questions and making comments, and the artists, were really talking and not just sort of, here's my art, but, there's challenging conversation on both parts happening. So, that's something that just must be super exciting to be around.
Yeah, it can be.
The one with Siberia was great.
Well, Siberia was a later one, and
That's the one in the
Siberia
film.
Simmons. And
Yeah.
the thing about that was she had so much to say in this, and really explained her art herself. So it was a really nice chance to listen to an artist that talked.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Catherine, you said that you previously didn't want to create a film about your mom, but the Art for Justice formation really sort of pinged you on. Why didn't you want to make a film about your mom? She seems like a great subject.
Except she won't. I mean, the core challenge for me in making the movie ended up being convincing her that she was an important enough person to make a film about, but that part of what made her so compelling to me was her humility and her lack of interest in appearing in the movie. So it was a lot about sort of the erasure and what was missing and what wasn't said, and about her listening, because I feel like even when she's with the artwork, she's listening to the artist, she's listening to the art, which is why it starts with that montage of her looking. You just see her looking. But I would never have wanted to put that burden on our relationship or on viewers of me just exploring my personal relationship with my mother. But when she started Art for Justice, I thought it made sense to tell this one story to help us understand a larger story. That her example was something I wanted people to follow, and whoever it is, that it wasn't just me that would benefit from learning that I had agency and that I could impact, or that I had various kinds of power in relationships, and that I could make use of that and make change, either as an artist or as an activist. And I wanted that story to be told. And who would have known that it would come out at a moment like this, where we really need everyone to do whatever they think they can to move from the place they're in and feel confident about that, and feel in community and be able to create some change.
Right, and last week, Catherine, you gave a fantastic speech at the City Club, the Cleveland City Club. And you made some really great statements about the relationship between art and justice. And, you said that really they're the same things. So, I'd love to have you talk a little bit about that to expand on it. It's such a great statement.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually honored to be sitting with Ava DuVernay, who made the film 13th, which was the tipping point for Aggie. She went to see the 13th, was the first documentary, first film by a Black woman to open the New York Film Festival. And Aggie went on opening night despite not wanting to go. And she had been reading and she'd been living in this world, and she knew and understood what the problems were. But I think seeing that film and having it so clearly put out there in this artistic language that Aggie could commune with and understand, she literally couldn't sleep that night, and went home and started the Art for Justice Fund with her friend Erin Walker, who runs the Ford Foundation. And so Ava serves as a governing board member with us on the Art for Justice Fund. So when I sat down to talk to Ava for this film, at the very end, I think I was just kind of thinking out loud, but I said, what is the relationship between art and justice? And she did not miss a beat. And she said, what's in the film? It opens the film, it bookends the film. So it opens the film and closes it. And she says, artists and activists are the same thing. We're all imagining something that's not there, right? You have an empty canvas. You have to create change. It's something that doesn't exist. And she said, but it's knowing that it can exist and then committing yourself to making that happen. And part of why I love that understanding is not just that it helps me embody all my parts of being an artist and an activist all at the same time, and a philanthropist all at the same time, but that it also allows people to understand that empathy can't be the end of the road, that art can't just be something that makes you feel a way, but that you have to actually act on it. And that's what will distinguish the artist and the activist from somebody who is just paying attention but not necessarily acting.
Right, and really this summer, there's been a real shift in the sands of art institutions, and how they're internal, not just the programming that they give to their respective communities, but also what's happening inside the doors. So I think this is a question for both of you, is how do you feel about some of these profound and amazing this conversation that's happening, and hopefully activities that are happening in our arts institutions? There's quite a few in New York, but really this is a national phenomenon about the changes in the treatment of artists, but also cultural workers that work within those organizations. So do you think that this is a sticky time, or hopefully it's not? There's something else that will live on past 2020?
No, I think it isn't just a sticky time. It's really a time that we've been very anxious to see. 42 years ago, we started a program called Studio in the School, which is, there's a little bit of it in the film. That was in very much underserved neighborhoods and neighborhoods that had low incomes. And we've kept on going with this with an institute that we now have that is nationwide. We come to Cleveland. Mm-hmm. And we are hoping to start some more groups like that. But this has been something that has existed a fairly long time in my life, and is very important. We have a wonderful leader of it now, this Allison Scott Williams, who's come on from Newark, where she was with the urban center there, and she really knows an awful lot about teaching. She was recently at Juilliard before she went to her present position, and then came to studio. And she has a musical background too, but it's very much an arts background. And this is a real catalyst, this studio in the school.
I think it's a perfect, actually, way to answer that question is by invoking studio in a school, because the connections have always been there. And Aggie started by saying this is something we've been trying to see, trying to instill, trying to do, which you referenced by seeing it in the film, that she's been working on this, that these silos never existed. It isn't okay to invest in depleting the poorest of our communities by making them pay $30 for 15 minutes for a phone call when they're in prison, which is their only lifeline and connection. You can't make all your living off that and your money off that and then go sit on an art board of a museum and act like they're not connected or that it's reasonable. And I think that what we need to do is, and I hope it continues, and it is going to continue, because we have to keep focused on making people full and complete and wholly a part of these conversations and these situations. And I think we have to go deep and we have to be systemic about it. And we can't do these band-aids, these superficial things, substitute a Black person for a white person in the curator role. You have to actually create change at these institutions. The people who are on the board can't be doing both things, because they're undermining the work of the museums and the galleries and the places that are showing the work. So I think more people are realizing, but it also allows for more of us to step back. It's really about power and saying that we're not just adding a seat, right? The wealthy white people who've had the power and been in the decision-making positions or on the boards or on the staffs or in the leadership positions can't just say, oh, we're gonna bring one more seat. It's no, actually, we need to diversify in a deep, systemic way who is at the table and how the table gets built. So I think that's what's going to change some of these things. And you have a great example right there in Cleveland, which is the museum that Aggie helped to start. And it's in a brilliant position of being a place that could be a real leader in this wave right now that's happening in this zeitgeist. And because there isn't a set collection, they don't have a collection of art that will dictate the direction they need to go in. They can actually create a space that is about the community, that is about different voices, that brings in people who haven't had a place in that museum and can open it up. But that's just one example. You gave others, I'm kind of doing them by name, but I think, it's gotta happen. If the arts is what we're talking about in this film and not just an investment strategy, if it is really the way that we can see a future that is more just and fair, then we have to look at how that is in all of our institutions, how it is playing out everywhere, right?
Yes, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an idea of kind of the difference when people say they want to share their power versus when they want to transfer their power.
That's right.
And I'd say with the selling and setting up of Art for Justice and the painting, that was a transfer, no doubt. But that can be scary for people to kind of, grab onto that idea and not, here, I have something and I'll give you something that I feel comfortable giving you. But
right, I'll give you part of it and we can do it together. But I'm glad you used that example, because we talk about it as really being alchemy, because we didn't have to lose the painting. The painting still exists, but it was really the intention, which Edgar Villanueva writes about, the intention behind her decision to sell and to create this fund. And it wasn't to create a fund that she and maybe me and even Ava would sit on forever and give away a little bit of money and make these decisions ourselves. it's actually a 5-year spend down fund, so that it is to transfer that money into the field to the artists and the organizers, the activists and the lawyers and the teachers, and say, you guys know how to use this money. Here's all the money. We're giving it away in 5 years. And actually, Aggie, importantly, turned around to her own community of peers, of collectors and other museum and art institution people, and asked them to participate. And from the very beginning, 30 individuals and couples joined her. And since then, there've been more. And now there's artists as well. And it's really, it brought so much more money that we're gonna have a 6th year to give another $20 million away and just get it out as fast as we can.
Fantastic. So we know that Masterpiece was one of your favorite pieces of art that hung in your house.
Yes.
So do you miss it?
Well, I do, in fact, but I really think, you know, having learned what it can do, the money can do, I'm really happy that I did it. And so, and Dorothy is too, the widow of Roy, who is a wonderful person, and her site, everybody adores Dorothy and really admires what she's done in the world. So we got 2 for 1.
And it's a beautiful question, because, you know, that was over Aggie's mantle for 40 years. And for anybody who has something they love on their wall, that when they've moved, they brought it and they put it back up, you know, or if you just like the pattern, or if you like the colors, we know that those things start to make us feel like home. So I think it was a bigger deal than she talks about to do it, but it wasn't surprising to me, because she's never been that materialistic in a way. She's been so clear that it's really about the artist. It's not about the objects. The objects come and go. She'll buy the objects from artists to help support them so they can keep working. And she might give them to someone, or give them to a museum, or put them on her wall. But it's really the artist being able to survive and thrive and help lead the way that she wants to support, so that she can follow. Right? Yeah.
And it's really a clarion call, I think, because the way that we think of the art world, and I kind of say that in its rarefied art world, is that people, you know, spend a lot of money and get this art, and then they squirrel it away somewhere, and then in, you know, several years they sell it for a lot more money. So it's always that kind of concept, especially to us in the Midwest, really seems to be separate. But because, you know, in number one, we've seen great, you know, we've talked about what's happening over the summer, but this is really bringing the art world, the high art world, into like what can happen on a human basis, and the, you know, the regular world, and seeing, you know, the alchemy of having that painting make its way into making the world a better place is just incredible. And, you know, I think that it's definitely a call to other collectors of, you know, it's not just about investing, you know.
No, it wasn't just an investment. It had much more, because I tried to do what we've been trying to get to happen for years now, money to go back to the artists, because many of the artists are young. And so I donated things to Dorothy, Dorothy's interests, and some of the places that she had worked, so that it did, in a way, give back a little bit to the artist.
Right. A curatorial program named after Dorothy in Sag Harbor, right? At the parish. That was part of the transfer of power of the sale of the Liechtenstein. But it is funny, because it's not in there, but Glenn and Aggie in their conversation for the film talked about
Glenn Ligon,
how he said, you know, I can't even buy, she said, it's hard to sell your pieces, right? And he said, yeah, but when I was most hungry, I had to sell anything people would buy. And now I wish I had some of those pieces. They're studies, they help me understand my own evolution and my thought process. And he said, I can't even afford them. Yeah. So it is, that's a whole other thing, but you're right, that the money never goes back to the artists. So Aggie just keeps buying new things from them.
It's an easy.
That money goes to.
So I think there was on the Aubin Instagram page, there's a little film about a spot that I don't think made it into the film with Erin Walker, who was talking to Agnes about, I guess he was being filmed and they got somebody to come in and do backflips. And he was like, I didn't do that. And Agnes was like, well, it looked like he did. I mean, that was just,
he had a wonderful ad sort of for the Ford Foundation when he did a dance he got up on the desk and he put his leg out this way and his arm out this way, and it was just incredible. And a lot of people thought he was the one that did it, but how could he really manage to do this dance? And he had somebody do it for him, and then that looked a lot like him. And it was a wonderful. A lot of people called me even and said, Darren's doing this dance and we've never seen him dance before. And I had to break it to them that he really wasn't the one that did it.
You should have let him on a little bit. But that just showed this delightful encounter. And I know when you make a film, you can't put all the awesome things in the film, just for narrative and time and all kinds of stuff. So what were the things, Catherine, that you really, you just love those little bits like with Erin, but just for whatever reasons couldn't fit in the film?
There were some wonderful pieces like that, because we spent, everyone who did a conversation with her, I didn't tell them the questions or give them much guidance. I just said for about an hour and a half, just talk, and you can ask her anything you want and see if she answers it. So there are a lot of very cute little magical moments like that. And in our, these little bits of time, we're trying to find some and share them. But for me, what really is missing from the films is things that weren't filmed. And I'm so fascinated and obsessed with archives. And, I think I used I used pretty much every second of footage of Aggie that existed before we started making the film is in there. And there's not very much. Partly she shuns the spotlight and doesn't want to ever be on camera, which is part of why I started these conversations with her, was just to get some footage. But I think there were things, there was one, for example, I was at MoMA going through some of their archives, and I found this hilarious speech that you must have written with Steve Martin. So Aggie was introducing Steve Martin to the Party in the Garden. He was getting the Party in the Garden award, not whatever. He was being celebrated one year. And she gave this hilarious talk. And then he gave a talk that was also it was as if they were in, and it was so funny. And it wasn't that long ago, 15 years or something. Yeah. It wasn't that long ago. And I was begging somebody had to have it, and nobody had any footage of that whole event. Oh, wow. So, there's just, it'll be interesting what the kids make today, because they have everything and they all have cameras. And even in quarantine, I'm producing a film that's about the Chilean uprising. And because we have folks in Chile, the director who lives in New York City and our editor haven't been able to go down, although they're going next week. But just that people are there, they have cameras, people can film. You don't even need to be there. It'll be interesting to see what people do with COVID and quarantine time, when, what kind of documentaries come out in ways other than just filming the Zooms and showing people talking this way. It'll be interesting to see how we get that. So right. That was missing for me, but I know that there were some things missing for you too from the film.
Well, they weren't, other than people who you filmed that were supposed to be on it, and these people,
there were some people in conversation. So we filmed about 35 people in conversation with Aggie, and I would say just a little more than a half of them appear in the film. And which was nice.
So they were, most of them were very nice about them being,
but talk about CCL and Mocha and stuff.
And so, but others a few people just said, "Oh my gosh, I'm on the cutting room floor," and they had to be explained what that meant. But the things that Catherine's referring to are happened before this film started, or so to speak, before it started, and we're building the new gallery, which is now MoCA Cleveland, and is a really going institution, which it wasn't when we started it. Nina Sandell and Marjorie Talalay started it, began, and I sort of helped with being having the money to do it, some money to do it, and I enjoyed my time with them very much because I got to hang things and I got to learn a lot about how you managed a gallery, which transferred to how I put up things and presented things of my own that I had. And then the other thing was the programs that, one of which we started in New York with a number of arts people, a lot of arts people that got together maybe once a week for a while there. And it started with the Urban League and Richard Kahn, who was very much into what was happening. And it was, a program to try to put a sculpture, which we did, in a place on the river, which was with,
Battery Park.
Park, and Anita Cantini was the one that started that with, with her interest in that, and then she grew on to be much more involved with who was chosen to do. There was a person that was wonderful that was chosen to do the 9/11 memorial, and I was on that program too for a while, and there were many sort of programs like that didn't get
into the film. You can see if it had been like a biography or a chronological film, there would have been a lot, including the Center for Curatorial Leadership, which is so important apropos of our conversation earlier about how to really institutionally change from the core our museums and organizations.
And they just completed a whole visit to all of these museums and college museums that are from the South, the Black colleges. So they've done a lot with their institution. I don't run it. It's run by a woman named Buffy Easton, and she does a very good job, but she's extended it to include so many other perspectives that we're really feeling that it's not going to be one of these things that's imposed on the institution, but it's grown from the institution to being a much more wholesome thing, and we'll include now the Black colleges, all of them that are in the South.
Usually when there are questions about finding talented Black, whether it's curators or cultural workers, I'll usually ask the questions, well, have you checked with HBCUs? And usually the answer is no. So, that's just, there's just tons. I mean, there's some fantastic programs at all of them. Spelman is a great example.
Spelman, we have programs.
Yeah, it's a fabulous museum. But before we get to those sort of old clips, I do want to mention Catherine and the skater girl blonde. I had to sort of back up, rewind a little bit before, but I'm like, wow, okay, that's great. 80s.
80s, yeah. I put it in.
What?
When I was skateboarding with Sarah, and
Oh,
my hair was so short. And blonde. Yeah, you didn't blink an eye. You were like, yep, that's my girl.
Right, that's Kat, she's home.
So,
So one thing that also was sort of half mentioned in the film a little bit, I think at MoMA, was the fact that May 29th is Agnes Gund Day.
oh, well, that is, you know,
So what are you doing?
they have the
Putting
mayor,
that on my schedule.
the mayor
I know,
does
right?
that. The mayor does that all the time. He has.
not
at
for
least some-
anybody else on this call.
But he has somebody, you know, that he picks that he calls it,
That
you
day.
know, that day.
I did have a fantasy that
Jennifer.
we were going to open the film on May 29th this year. That was kind of nice.
Well, you have to have a definite special showing of it somewhere. So, and yeah, that's a great excuse to drink some champagne and toast.
Yep.
Agnes.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
So one thing we talked a little bit, I think, earlier about the fact that some of those folks that made it into the film were your grandchildren, and how you enjoyed so much talking to them. The whole sort of conversation took a different tone of the love that you felt and pride and joy in these young people. So was that, how was that, just sitting there and being interviewed by your grandchildren?
Well, they were wonderful, all of them, to, you know, bother to come and to do, and make the questions, and they ranged from the absurd to to somewhat more involved. But they asked, Sadie, for instance, asked what I could remember about people.
Your first crush?
Yes.
Dr. Lust and Cocky Roach. You can't write this stuff. Yeah. It was interesting for me because, like I said, I actually started the project as an archive project. I just wanted to film interviews with Aggie. I wasn't going to make a movie. And she said that I could do it. And it was just, I said, we'll do 5 or 6 hours, just you and me, and I'll just film them. And the first one was so terrible. We were both like really stiff and boring, and it was just didn't work at all. And I thought, well, I don't want to do that anymore, but I'll just film with the kids, because I just wanted to hear her voice and hear her stories. And they always have these cute conversations and these great relationships. And I started doing them, and I was like, I got to do them all. And then she said, well, this is better than you talking to me. So we got, other people coming in, and it became a way to actually, these talking head interviews, these one-on-one interviews have so little to offer us in the way of spontaneity or warmth or real investigation that acknowledges that both people have something to say. It's not like a journalistic, it's a conversation. And so it was a revelation when I realized that was going to be the way to go to tell the story. It's sort of a prism of her, of who she is. And she's such an extrovert, and quarantine's hard on extroverts. Yeah.
You should know.
Yeah. Well, I'm sort of an introverted extrovert. No.
So Catherine,
There's another question.
well, this is definitely to you. So you have been, it's almost been a year that you've been chair of our foundation. What do you think? Are you settling in?
The weirdest year. What a year. It's not what I expected, but I don't think that's because of the position or the foundation. I think that's because of
The world.
the reckoning that's happening. And I think everything is just shifting and reorganizing, and it's big. I don't think there's going to be a back to normal. I think everybody's lost a lot. I don't think it's been painless, as we know. I mean, there's over 200,000 people that the Trump administration is responsible for killing. It's true. I didn't say to vote for anybody. I just said that. I mean, I'm just saying that there's been incredible loss. This is not without its pain, but I am hopeful that things will change. And I feel like, you know, like everything in my life, it's all the same thing. The Gund Foundation is like with my family and with arts and with, you know, community and with politics, and that's all in that place too. So I feel amazingly lucky to have my cousins that I work with on that board, and still one aunt who's on the board, and then the Cleveland members of our community. Your sister-in-law. Oh yeah, and one's my sister. Yeah. I think of the cousins generation, but one of the cousins is actually my sister, Anna. And but our Cleveland members are so important, both to historically, but I think are becoming recognized and celebrated in a different way. And moving forward, I want to embrace that integration into the community more, so that the family isn't one thing and our Cleveland members one thing, but that we recognize, because we all do, that we're all a family once we're in that situation, and to look at ways to really explore and investigate our own roles and responsibilities as board members, Cleveland and family board members, but to bring the community in different ways, not only through the board, in other ways too. But I look forward to a bigger voice, a stronger voice, a more powerful voice that we step aside for, not just making room for more voices, but actually give some of the Cleveland voices more leadership role. And I think that that'll impact a lot of how the foundation functions in the city.
Outstanding. I'm looking at some of the questions that we have here that I just lost. No, I have them. I have them. Here's a question that we get. Actually, I've gotten a couple of times at the foundation. For Agnes, where exactly was your childhood home located in Cleveland?
Well, it was out in a place called Beechwood Village, which then, when we lived there, it was an RFD post office. No, it was no post office existed for it. And we were really in the country, and, you know, had nobody on the street. And now we know, I mean, now the streets are all entangled, and it and looks like a development of some sort. And then it was only that way because it was done after Shaker Lake's kind of housing, or houses that were built in Cleveland Heights and Shaker Heights. And this was to be start a group like that. And then it was the you know, depression came, and the depression hit, and nobody else built out there. So
what street was it?
Selkirk Road, and it ran into Hurlingham and Hendon, which were on both sides of it and still exist, but now have, you know, dozens of houses on them. And this is a house that still exists there, and it's all has gates around it and everything. And I don't know how these people live in this house, because they it's the only house like that out there, and it seems so strange to have it still be. We wanted to make it into a library. I thought it would, Graham was willing, my brother, who's an architect and very good one, at one time wanted to, he hadn't really started yet, but he was willing to take it and do it all for a library for them. And they turned him down and said it wasn't big enough. And the one they built is very much smaller than anything our house would have provided. So it's too bad that it
Yeah,
wasn't.
maybe they should revisit that.
Well,
Yeah, we can't never have too many libraries.
Exactly.
Libraries are key.
well, Catherine's daughter is being a library scientist, and
She's in graduate school to be a librarian and an archivist. True. Library science degree.
Yes, yes. Awesome. My mom was a librarian.
Really?
Yeah.
See, there you go.
So awesome people. So here's another question. I consider two of your greatest contributions to the art world, Studio in a School and Studio Institute, and Art for Justice Fund. What do you consider to be your greatest contribution, Agnes?
well, I still favor Studio in the School. I think that was really a milestone, not because of me, but because of the people that run it. Tom Cahill was in there for 40 years, and then he started the Institute. So he is still working with it. And now we have this fabulous teacher that was a musician, as I said before, and opera singer. And she, Allison Scott Williams, who runs the New York part of it. And so it's bigger and better than it was 42 years ago.
But I love the parts in the film when the student Giancarlo talks, grown up who used to be a student.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that really speaks to how foundational Studio is. And people say, oh, you know, it's an elective, or we don't really need it. And it's hard to put into words why it's so important. You know, we talk about learning critical thinking, we talk about communicating and understanding your own self-identity. But what he said was that when he walked into the school, he was only asked for answers, and that in the Studio classroom was the only place anybody asked him what he thought. And you know, when he makes it that clear, and you realize that he's saying somebody wanted to know what I thought instead of what the equation was or what. And yeah. It's so powerful. And he said, you know, we're just given destruction. He has so many good quotes in there. I should make a short film just about him, because there were even more. His story is incredible, but he says we're just given destruction as a way to solve problems. Studio gave us creativity to solve problems.
And I believe that, I'm not supposed to say this, but I really think that could we turn every school into an arts-oriented program and have the arts being equal to the other
Reading,
subjects, and you would find that you would have a much better school system, and people would learn much more, and it would just be a finer thing. But nobody's going to ever do it, so it's too bad, because it really, everybody that comes and teaches there and that teaches every day in the schools loves it. So I met a person the other night that had been there the other day at Titus's.
Oh, that's right. There's a young curator at the Next Haven, which is a new great organization. What, we have to go? Okay. Oh, you went like this. Oh, at Next Haven. So they have fellowships there in New Haven, and they have artist studios, big, beautiful spaces. And they have 2 curatorial fellows. And one of them came over to Aggie and said, I wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for Studio in a School. Wow. I thought I was going to go into she was going to go into something. And then she said, I went to Studio in the School and I realized I could be in the arts. And now she's becoming a curator.
Oh, outstanding, outstanding. Just a little plug is that Studio Institute, which is the national entity, has a program in Cleveland called Arts Intern. And folks, students who either are not from Cleveland, but at Cleveland schools, or students that live in Cleveland and might be at other schools, take the summer, and a lot of the arts organizations, and it's been growing every year, have interns for the summer, and they get paid and they get fantastic opportunities, but also the organizations really learn a lot about having these talented young people there. So,
Yeah, you've
so
been
if you're
so great
interested,
to
yeah,
support it.
it's called Arts Intern. I think we have time for at least one more question. And this is for Catherine. This actually is for both of you, so I'll just read them both. For Agnes, I really appreciate seeing and hearing you talk about the uprisings of the 1960s, particularly here in Cleveland's Huff neighborhood. What connection, this just moved, what connections do you see to today's uprising? And for Catherine, I also was struck about how you highlighted them, and as native Clevelanders, can you speak to how that influences your activism?
Well,
You go. All I'll say is that when I was growing up, Huff, along with Watts and many other places in the country, was on fire, so to speak, with activism, not about what we have activism about today, but it could have been, but it was because they were rebelling, those places were rebelling against how they were subjugated and pushed down by other people in Cleveland.
I would say that those are actually fundamentally the exact same thing, and it's part of the same struggle that's been going. So for me, it was, you know, about unraveling from Art for Justice, seeing what I needed to understand about Aggie to see how she could become the person who could do this. And so it was, how do you go from being in this rich, white, segregated place in the country where she was mostly with her siblings and a few families, into New York City with a multiracial queer family members, and like a much different scenario, and that, like, what got her there. And I think for me, that was where I felt like this is a story we kind of all ask ourselves, or that people ask us, right? So you have siblings, they were raised by the same parents, they were raised in the same house, they, whatever, and you're completely different. Like, what makes you believe what you believe? And, we can ask this of everyone in the country right now. We have all these ways we try to generalize and sort of categorize people, but if you talk to people, people don't fit that even easily into those boxes. We got into it last night with some friends, is it the rich white people that are voting for Trump? Is it the poor white people that are voting for Trump? Like, who are the people that we're talking about? And I think for me, seeing, I only picked the things that I needed to understand about why Aggie and I have the relationship we had, which allowed us to work on Art for Justice together, and make the film together, but also how she became that person. And I think there was a lot of exploration of the sort of phases of being human, right? She's a child, and the one African-American person she knows is Henrietta Givens, who was her housekeeper, who came and took care of the kids in the house and made food. And Aggie knows that she wasn't ever supported in exploring that relationship. It was never cultivated. It wasn't something that she could focus on, but there was a part of her that knew that meant there was something else. She was from this neighborhood she'd never gone to. She didn't know her family, if she had children, or she never visited her where she lived in. But I think she kept that forever. And to me, those are the kinds of lessons we can look at to see how they go through. And there's people who've been fighting this fight. Art for Justice did not start, obviously, the criminal justice reform movement. There's people that have been doing it. We jumped into a moving river. And it's when people make those connections, I think those historical connections and even individually, but also societally, communally, in your families, that's how we're going to learn, and how we're going to make a more concerted, stable advancement towards justice.
Fantastic. So I'll close with this last question, which is, what gives both of you hope especially during these times now.
Well, I think if people get out to vote, if people, you know, are really, really active in this time that we're coming to. I mean, we've got to have people that vote and that say their minds. I had 2 people over last night and they stayed with me in the country, and they went down to Florida today to work on the west side of Florida with volunteers that are working really hard in Florida to, they get some of the credit if Florida turns. I mean, if it
Anyway, vote, I think, is how far we can go. But I do think that, you know, I feel like Aggie and Justice Ginsburg and people of this generation, and, you know, people are quarantining across generations now. The relationships we were talking about with grandparents and grandchildren. I feel like part of what gives me hope is that our elders, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, just believed that that this was a future worth fighting for and that we could get there. And I feel like she just did it till the very end. And Aggie is doing, you know, the generosity of you to be on here. I also do want to take 1 second to thank you, Jennifer, and thank the film festival for having us, because Aggie and I were really excited to go to Cleveland in March, and that was our plan. And we had a lot of activities planned, and the film festival is so close to us and was really close to her brother, George. And so it's been hard to change, but, you know, the Cleveland Film Festival has shown up and put this on and made it possible for us to talk to people in Cleveland after seeing the film. And Aggie's been really generous to me to keep talking and keep engaging with people in these conversations, because I feel like that's what gives me hope, is that we are still talking to each other, even though we're so isolated.
Right. Well, we've come to a close. Like I said, there's probably another hour or so easy that we could talk more. But I want to definitely thank you, Catherine, and you, Agnes, for joining us in this last hour, and definitely for our audience for this invigorating and important conversation. If you'd like to get more information about the upcoming 45th Cleveland International Film Festival, and that's in 2021, please continue to follow CIFF on social media and visit clevelandfilm.org. And if you would like to support Art for Justice, you can do so at artforjusticefund.org. That's ARTFORJUSTICEFUND.org. And of course, if you would like to support the Cleveland International Film Festival, please visit clevelandfilm.org/donate. So thank you. Have a fantastic rest of the day. Go Browns. And
I'll just say that the film is going to be on its national virtual theatrical premiere. Starts October 7th on the Film Forum website, the Film Forum Theater in New York City.
great.
It's virtual and it's national, and you can get tickets now, and please help us spread the word.
Right, for sure. And this is on national, so tell your friends that live outside of Cleveland. And yeah, go see it again. I know I will. Alrighty, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you,
very
Erin.
much.
Okay.